The massive alien transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a dark storm cloud, its hull gleaming with advanced technology that made human spacecraft look like toys. Captain Dae-Ho Kim of the U.S. Marine Corps stood at attention with his unit on the landing platform, his jaw clenched as he watched the vessel touch down. At 6 feet 4 inches and built like a fortress, Dae-Ho was known throughout the military as an unstoppable force. His reputation for never backing down from a fight had earned him respect, and fear in equal measure. The alien delegation emerged from their ship with an air of superiority that immediately set every human on edge. These were the Valkorians, a warrior race that had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Their leader, General Tae-min, stepped forward with fluid grace despite his imposing 7-foot frame. His silver armor gleamed in the sunlight, and his forearms moved with practiced precision. Behind him marched 20 of his finest soldiers, each one a veteran of countless interstellar conflicts. The humans had been preparing for this moment for months. Earth had recently been discovered by the Galactic Federation, and the Valkorians had been sent to evaluate whether humanity deserved membership or would be classified as a primitive species fit only for servitude. The fate of billions hung in the balance, and everyone knew that first impressions would determine everything. President Elena Martinez stepped forward to greet the aliens, flanked by General Roberts and a carefully selected honor guard. The ceremony was meant to showcase humanity's best and brightest, demonstrating that Earth's people were worthy of respect among the stars. But as Dae-Ho watched the alien soldiers survey his men with barely concealed contempt, he felt his blood beginning to boil. These creatures looked at humans the way a lion might look at sheep, and every fiber of his being rebelled against that dismissive stare. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife as the two groups faced each other on the tarmac. Dae-Ho's fellow Marines, including his closest friend Sergeant Ji-Woo Park, stood rigid at attention, but he could see the same anger burning in their eyes. They had spent their entire careers defending their planet and their people, and now they were expected to smile and bow before these arrogant aliens, who saw them as nothing more than potential slaves. General Tae-min's voice carried across the platform as he began his opening remarks, his words translated by advanced technology that seemed to bypass the ears entirely and speak directly to the brain. His tone was condescending, filled with the casual arrogance of someone who had never met an equal, let alone a superior. He spoke of humanity's potential, but his words dripped with implications that Earth's people would need to prove themselves worthy of even the most basic considerations. As the alien general continued his speech, Dae-Ho noticed how the Valkorian soldiers seemed to be evaluating every human present, taking mental notes and measurements as if sizing up livestock. Their four eyes moved independently, creating an unsettling sensation of being simultaneously watched from multiple angles. Some of the younger Marines began to shift uncomfortably under this intense scrutiny, but Dae-Ho remained perfectly still, his own gaze locked on the alien commander. The formal introductions began, with President Martinez presenting each of the human delegates to their alien counterparts. When it came time for the military presentation, General Roberts stepped forward to introduce his best officers. Dae-Ho's chest swelled with pride as his name was called, representing not just the Marine Corps but all of humanity's fighting spirit. He had trained his entire life for moments like this, though he never imagined it would involve aliens from another world. But as General Roberts began listing Dae-Ho's accomplishments and the honors he had earned in service to his country, General Tae-min's expression grew increasingly amused. The alien commander began to chuckle, a sound like grinding metal that sent chills down every human spine. His forearms crossed in a gesture that somehow managed to be both dismissive and insulting, and when he finally spoke, his words would set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of human history forever. General Tae-min's laughter echoed across the landing platform as he stepped closer to examine Dae-Ho, with the casual interest of someone inspecting a curious artifact. His four eyes roved over the human Marine's muscular frame, taking in every detail with scientific precision. When he finally spoke, his words hit like a physical blow to every person present. "This is your finest warrior?" Tae-min asked, his voice carrying a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "I have seen more impressive specimens in our menagerie of primitive species. Perhaps humans would be better suited for entertainment purposes rather than military service." The alien general's laughter grew louder as he turned to his subordinates. sharing what was clearly a private joke at humanity's expense. Deho's hands slowly clenched into fists at his sides, his knuckles turning white as he fought to maintain military discipline. Around him, he could hear the sharp intake of breath from his fellow Marines, and he knew that every one of them was struggling with the same burning rage that threatened to consume him. This was exactly the kind of moment that his commanding officers had warned him about during the briefings. The kind of provocation that could start an interstellar war before humanity even had a chance to prove itself. President Martinez quickly stepped forward, attempting to salvage the situation with diplomatic words and gracious smiles. She spoke of mutual respect and the importance of understanding between species, but her efforts only seemed to amuse the Valkorians further. General Taman held up one of his four hands in a gesture that was clearly meant to silence her, treating the leader of the free world like an unruly child who had spoken out of turn. Perhaps, the alien general continued, his gaze returning to Deho with predatory interest, your Marine would like to demonstrate these legendary human fighting skills I have heard whispered about in certain corners of the galaxy. My youngest soldier, Corporal Boram, has been looking for entertainment during this tedious diplomatic mission. As he spoke, one of the Valkorian soldiers stepped forward with fluid grace that spoke of deadly training and natural superiority. Boram was smaller than his general, but still towered over every human present at nearly 7 feet tall. His silver armor gleamed with integrated technology that enhanced his already formidable natural abilities, and his forearms moved with the coordinated precision of someone who had never known defeat. Most intimidating of all were his eyes, which seemed to look through Deho rather than at him, as if the outcome of any potential confrontation was already decided. The silence that followed was deafening. Every human on the platform understood that this was more than just a challenge to a single Marine. It was a test of humanity's entire worth in the eyes of the galaxy. If Deho refused, it would confirm every stereotype about human cowardice and weakness. If he accepted and lost, it might doom his species to second-class status among the stars. But if he somehow managed to win, it could change everything. General Roberts stepped forward quickly, attempting to defuse the situation with talk of formal procedures and diplomatic protocols. But before he could finish his sentence, Deho's voice cut through the air with the authority of a man who had never backed down from a fight in his life. I accept, he said simply, his words carrying across the platform like a declaration of war. The alien soldiers immediately formed a circle around the designated combat area, their movements coordinated with military precision. The human delegation found themselves pushed to the outer edge of the ring, forced to watch from a distance as their representative prepared to face an opponent who seemed to possess every possible advantage. President Martinez tried one last time to intervene, but Deho was already removing his dress uniform jacket and rolling up his sleeves. Sergeant Jiwoo Park caught his captain's eye from across the circle, and in that brief moment of contact, years of friendship and shared battles passed between them. Jiwoo had seen Deho fight his way out of impossible situations before, but never against an opponent like this. The alien soldier moved with inhuman grace as he prepared for combat, his forearms flowing through what appeared to be a warm-up routine that looked more like a deadly dance. As the two fighters faced each other in the center of the circle, the weight of human expectations pressed down on Deho's shoulders like a mountain. He knew that billions of people would eventually hear about this moment, that their future among the stars might depend on the next few minutes. But as he looked into Boram's 4 cold eyes and saw nothing but contempt for his species, all the diplomatic considerations faded away, leaving only the pure, burning determination that had carried him through every battle of his military career. Boram circled Deho with the confident swagger of a predator that had never encountered worthy prey, his forearms weaving through the air in complex patterns that spoke of advanced martial training. The Valkorian combat style was a thing of beauty and terror, developed over millennia of conquest across dozens of worlds. Each movement flowed into the next with mathematical precision, creating defensive positions while simultaneously preparing devastating attacks that could come from any angle. The alien soldier's armor hummed softly as its integrated systems analyzed Deho's every movement, calculating optimal strike points and defensive strategies. Boram had fought representatives from 17 different species during the Valkorian expansion, and humans appeared to be among the least impressive he had encountered. Their single pair of arms seemed laughably inadequate, Their reflexes appeared sluggish and their military bearing, while admirable for primitives, lacked the fluid grace of truly evolved warriors. "Your people show promise in some areas," Boram commented as he continued his predatory circling, his voice carrying the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "Perhaps you could serve as administrative assistants or maintenance workers aboard our vessels. Physical combat, however, requires capabilities that your species simply lacks." His words were meant to provoke, but they were delivered with the matter-of-fact certainty of someone stating an obvious truth. Deho remained perfectly still in the center of the circle, his breathing controlled and his stance relaxed. To the untrained eye, he might have appeared frozen by fear or overwhelmed by the magnitude of his opponent's advantages, but Sergeant Jiwoo Park recognized the signs immediately. His captain was entering what they called the zone, that state of perfect focus that had made him legendary among the Marine Corps. Every muscle was coiled like a spring, every sense was heightened to superhuman levels, and his mind was calculating angles and distances with the precision of a computer. The first attack came without warning, Boram's forearms striking simultaneously from different angles in a coordinated assault that should have ended the fight in seconds. His upper arms aimed for Deho's head and throat, while his lower arms targeted the ribs and solar plexus, creating an impossible-to-defend combination that had defeated countless opponents across the galaxy. The integrated targeting systems in his armor confirmed what his experience had already told him. No creature with only 2 arms could possibly counter such an attack, but Deho wasn't there when the strikes arrived. The human marine had moved with explosive speed that caught everyone by surprise, including the Valkorian soldiers who were watching with professional interest. Instead of trying to block or dodge all 4 attacks, Deho had stepped inside Boram's reach and pivoted, using the alien's own momentum against him. It was a move that shouldn't have been possible given the speed and coordination of the attack, but somehow the human had found the one tiny gap in what appeared to be perfect coverage. Boram's 4 eyes widened in genuine surprise as he found himself off balance and exposed, his perfect attack having struck nothing but air. For the first time since the combat had begun, uncertainty flickered across his features as he realized that perhaps this human was not quite the primitive creature he had appeared to be. The alien soldier quickly recovered his stance and resumed his circling, but now there was a new wariness in his movements. "Interesting," Boram acknowledged, his tone losing some of its casual arrogance. "You have some small skill after all, but speed alone will not save you from the inevitable outcome of this encounter." As he spoke, his armor's systems began running more sophisticated analysis programs, treating the human as a potentially significant threat rather than a mere curiosity. Around the circle, the human delegation watched with growing hope, while the Valkorian soldiers observed with increased attention. General Taiman's forearms remained crossed, but his expression had shifted from amused contempt to genuine interest. This was not proceeding according to the expected pattern, and anything that deviated from Valkorian predictions was worthy of careful study. Deho continued to remain silent, his dark eyes tracking every micro-movement of his opponent's forearms. He had learned something crucial from that first exchange. The alien's attacks, while impressively coordinated, followed predictable patterns based on his species' natural advantages. Boram was used to fighting opponents who tried to match his forearmed assault with conventional defensive techniques. He was not prepared for someone who refused to play by those rules. The second attack came with increased ferocity. Boram's confidence restored as he launched into a more complex assault pattern. His forearms wove through the air like deadly serpents, creating a web of strikes that seemed to cover every possible escape route. This time he was certain the primitive human would fall before the superior evolution of Valkorian combat arts. Boram's second attack was a masterpiece of alien fighting technique, his forearms creating a deadly symphony of coordinated strikes that had taken him decades to perfect. Each arm moved by itself, but in perfect harmony with the others making attack, angles that no 2-armed opponent should be able to counter. The Valkorian soldier confidence had returned completely as he saw what he was certain would be the decisive moment of their short fight. But Deho had been studying his opponent during those important seconds of recovery, and what he saw gave him hope. For all their advantages, the Valkorians fought like they had always fought against opponents who tried to match their superior numbers and speed with normal tactics. They were not prepared for someone who had spent his entire military career learning to overcome impossible odds through smart thinking adaptation and sheer bloody-minded determination. The human Marine next move broke every rule of standard fighting methods. Instead of backing away or trying to deflect the incoming strikes, Daeho stepped directly into the attack with explosive forward movement. His shoulder dropped low as he drove himself inside Boram reach, accepting a glancing blow to his ribs in exchange for positioning that no alien warrior had ever had to defend against. Time seemed to slow down as Daeho right fist traveled upward in a devastating uppercut aimed directly at Boram's jaw. The punch carried behind it not just the force of human muscle and bone, but the accumulated frustration of watching his species be dismissed as inferior, the burning rage of seeing his planet representatives treated like amusing primitives, and the desperate determination of a man fighting for the future of his entire world. The impact was like thunder. Boram's head snapped back with a sickening crack that echoed across the landing platform like a gunshot. The alien soldier forearms flailed wildly as his body lifted completely off the ground. From the force of the blow, his sophisticated armor systems flashing error warnings as they tried to compensate for their wearer, sudden loss of consciousness. He crashed to the concrete ground with a metallic clang that seemed to echo in the stunned silence that followed. For a moment that stretched into forever, nobody moved. The Valkorian soldiers stared in complete shock at their fallen comrade, their four eyes wide with disbelief. This simply did not happen. Their species were evolved warriors, genetically and technologically superior to primitive humans in every way that could be measured. Yet Boram lay motionless on the ground, his jaw visibly broken, and his armor medical systems already working frantically to stabilize their unconscious. Wearer General Taemin, forearms slowly uncrossed as he stepped forward to examine the fallen soldier, his expression cycling through emotions that the human observers could not fully understand. The alien general medical scanner confirmed what everyone could see. Boram's jaw was indeed broken in 3 places, and the soldier would require significant medical attention before he could return to active duty. More importantly, he had been defeated in less than 10 seconds by a supposedly inferior human warrior. President Martinez and her diplomatic team stood frozen in horror, realizing that what should have been a carefully controlled demonstration had turned into a potential interstellar incident. The sound of Boram's body hitting the concrete seemed to echo in their minds as they contemplated the possible consequences of their Marine decisive victory. Would this be seen as an act of aggression? Had humanity just declared war on a vastly superior alien civilization? But Sergeant Ji Woo, Park and the other Marines wore expressions of fierce pride as they watched their captain stand over his fallen opponent. They had witnessed something extraordinary, not just a victory against impossible odds, but proof that human determination and skill could triumph even when facing supposedly superior opponents. Daeho had not just won a fight, he had validated every human warrior who had ever refused to accept defeat. Daeho himself remained perfectly calm, his breathing steady as he looked down at the unconscious Valkorian. There was no gloating in his expression, no theatrical celebration of victory. He had done what needed to be done, nothing more and nothing less. As the alien medical team rushed forward to tend to Boram, the human Marine stepped back and came to attention, waiting to face whatever consequences his actions might bring. The silence stretched on as General Taemin continued his examination of the fallen warrior, occasionally looking up to study Daeho with an expression that had completely transformed from its earlier contempt. The other Valkorian soldiers had formed a protective circle around their injured comrade, but their attention kept shifting to the human who had accomplished what they had believed to be impossible. Around the circle, both human and alien witnesses tried to process what they had just seen. A single punch had changed everything. The supposed primitive had defeated the advanced warrior. The underdog had triumphed over superior technology and training. In 3 seconds, the entire dynamic between the two species had been completely reversed. When Taemin finally straightened up and turned to face the human delegation, his forearms moved in what appeared to be a gesture of formal acknowledgement. His voice when he spoke carried none of its earlier arrogance, replaced instead by something that sounded almost like respect. The words he chose would echo through the halls of human history and mark the beginning of a new chapter in Earth relationship with the galaxy beyond. The medical team worked quickly and efficiently, their advanced equipment humming as it assessed the full extent of Boram injuries and began the complex healing process. The broken jaw was the most visible damage, but everyone present understood that something much more significant had been shattered. The assumption of alien superiority that had governed this entire encounter. Ho stepped directly into the attack with explosive, forward momentum. His shoulder dropped low as he drove himself inside Boram's reach, accepting a glancing blow to his ribs in exchange for positioning that no alien warrior had ever had to defend against. Time seemed to slow as Daeho's right fist traveled upward, in a devastating uppercut aimed directly at Boram's jaw. The punch carried behind it not just the force of human muscle and bone, but the accumulated frustration of watching his species be dismissed as inferior, the burning rage of seeing his planet's representatives treated like amusing primitives, and the desperate determination of a man fighting for the future of his entire world. The impact was thunderous. Boram's head snapped back with a sickening crack that echoed across the landing platform like a gunshot. The alien soldier's forearms flailed wildly as his body lifted completely off the ground from the force of the blow, his sophisticated armor systems flashing error warnings as they tried to compensate for their wearer's sudden loss of consciousness. He crashed to the tarmac with a metallic clang that seemed to reverberate in the stunned silence that followed. For a moment that stretched into eternity, nobody moved. The Valkorian soldiers stared in complete shock at their fallen comrade, their four eyes wide with disbelief. This simply did not happen. Their species were evolved warriors, genetically and technologically superior to primitive humans in every measurable way. Yet Boram lay motionless on the ground, his jaw visibly broken and his armor's medical systems already working frantically to stabilize their unconscious wearer. General Taemin's forearm slowly uncrossed as he stepped forward to examine the fallen soldier, his expression cycling through emotions that the human observers couldn't fully interpret. The alien general's medical scanner confirmed what everyone could see. Boram's jaw was indeed broken in 3 places, and the soldier would require significant medical attention before he could return to active duty. More importantly, he had been defeated in less than 10 seconds by a supposedly inferior human warrior. President Martinez and her diplomatic team stood frozen in horror, realizing that what should have been a carefully controlled demonstration had turned into a potential interstellar incident. The sound of Boram's body hitting the tarmac seemed to echo in their minds as they contemplated the possible consequences of their Marine's decisive victory. Would this be seen as an act of aggression? Had humanity just declared war on a vastly superior alien civilization? But Sergeant Jiwoo Park and the other Marines wore expressions of fierce pride as they watched their captain stand over his fallen opponent. They had witnessed something extraordinary, not just a victory against impossible odds, but proof that human determination and skill could triumph even when facing supposedly superior opponents. Daeho hadn't just won a fight. He had validated every human warrior who had ever refused to accept defeat. Daeho himself remained perfectly calm, his breathing steady as he looked down at the unconscious Valkorian. There was no gloating in his expression, no theatrical celebration of victory. He had done what needed to be done, nothing more and nothing less. As the alien medical team rushed forward to tend to Boram, the human Marine stepped back and came to attention, waiting to face whatever consequences his actions might bring. The silence stretched on as General Taemin continued his examination of the fallen warrior, occasionally looking up to study Daeho with an expression that had completely transformed from its earlier contempt. The other Valkorian soldiers had formed a protective circle around their injured comrade, but their attention kept shifting to the human who had accomplished what they had believed. General Taemin stood in absolute silence for what felt like an eternity, his 4 eyes fixed on Daeho with an intensity that made the air itself seem to crackle with tension. The medical team worked frantically over Boram's unconscious form, their advanced equipment humming as it assessed the extent of his injuries and began the healing process. The broken jaw was the most visible damage, but the alien soldier's pride had suffered wounds that would take far longer to heal. Around the circle, both human and Valkorian observers waited for the alien general's reaction with barely contained anxiety. This moment would determine whether Daeho's victory was seen as a legitimate demonstration of human capability or an unprovoked assault that would justify immediate retaliation. The fate of Earth hung in the balance as Tai-Min processed what he had just witnessed, his advanced mind struggling to reconcile reality with everything his species believed about human limitations. When the alien general finally moved, it was to perform a gesture that no human had ever seen before, a complex movement of all four arms that seemed to flow through multiple positions before settling into what could only be described as a formal salute. The other Valkorian soldiers immediately followed their commander's example, their synchronized movements creating a display of respect that left the human delegation speechless with surprise. "I owe you an apology. Warrior Daeho," Tai-Min said, his voice carrying a gravity that had been completely absent from his earlier casual arrogance. "I allowed preconceived notions about your species to cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I dishonored both myself and the traditions of honorable combat that my people hold sacred. Your victory was achieved through skill, courage, and superior tactics, exactly the qualities we value most highly in the Galactic Federation." President Martinez stepped forward cautiously, uncertain whether this dramatic shift in tone represented genuine respect or some kind of elaborate alien political maneuvering. Her diplomatic training told her to be suspicious of such rapid changes in attitude, but the expressions on the Valkorian soldiers' faces seemed to indicate that something fundamental had shifted in their perception of humanity. "Boram is one of our finest young warriors," Tai-Min continued, glancing down at his injured subordinate with what appeared to be a mixture of concern and pride. "He has defeated champions from 12 different worlds during our expansion campaigns, and his combat record was previously unblemished. For him to be overcome so decisively by a human warrior suggests that we have seriously underestimated your species' potential." The alien general turned to address the entire human delegation, his forearms moving in gestures that somehow managed to convey both apology and genuine admiration. "Your Marine demonstrated something that we believed impossible, that superior technology and natural advantages could be overcome through pure determination and innovative thinking. This is precisely the kind of adaptability that the galaxy needs in these troubled times." Sergeant Jiwoo Park found himself grinning despite the diplomatic tension surrounding them. He had served alongside Daeho for over a decade, and he knew that his captain's victory wasn't luck or accident. It was the inevitable result of years spent training to overcome superior opponents through intelligence, preparation, and unshakable will. The fact that an advanced alien civilization had finally recognized these qualities filled him with fierce pride. As the medical team successfully stabilized Boram and began preparing him for transport to more advanced facilities, the young Valkorian soldier briefly regained consciousness. His four eyes focused on Daeho with difficulty, and when he spoke, his words were slurred by pain medication and the effects of his injuries, but his meaning was clear. "How?" was all he managed to ask, the single word carrying layers of confusion, respect, and desperate need to understand how his perfect attack had been so completely countered. Daeho stepped closer to the injured alien, his expression softening with the compassion that all true warriors felt for defeated opponents who had fought with honor. "You fought like someone who had never lost before," he said simply. "That made you predictable. In my military, we train against opponents who are stronger, faster, and better equipped than we are. We learn to win by refusing to fight on their terms." Boram's eyes widened with understanding, and despite his injuries, he managed what might have been a smile. "Teach me," he whispered before losing consciousness again, his words carrying a request that would have been unthinkable just minutes earlier. General Tai-Min observed this exchange with growing fascination, his strategic mind already beginning to grasp the implications of what he had witnessed. The humans didn't just possess unexpected combat capabilities. They had developed an entire military philosophy based on overcoming superior opposition through adaptation and innovation. These were exactly the qualities that the Galactic Federation desperately needed as it faced new threats from beyond the known galaxy. "Perhaps," the alien general said thoughtfully, "it is we who have much to learn from your species rather than the other way around." The aftermath of Daeho's stunning victory sent shockwaves through both the human delegation and the Valkorian observers, but it was General Tai-Min's reaction that would ultimately reshape humanity's destiny among the stars. Instead of viewing the defeat Of his soldier as an insult to be avenged, the alien commander saw it as an unprecedented opportunity to learn from a species that had clearly mastered the art of asymmetric warfare. Over the following hours, as Boram received advanced medical treatment that would have been impossible on Earth, Taimin engaged in lengthy discussions with both Daeho and the human military leadership. What emerged from these conversations was a revelation that changed everything the Valkorians thought. They knew about combat effectiveness and strategic thinking. The humans had not just won through luck or primitive ferocity. They had developed sophisticated doctrines specifically designed to defeat superior opponents. Your military academies teach something we have never encountered. Taimin explained to the assembled delegation as the formal ceremonies resumed. Most species we have encountered either submit to superior force or attempt to match it directly. Humans appear to have built their entire military philosophy around the assumption that they will always be outgunned and outnumbered. This has created capabilities that are genuinely unique in our experience. President Martinez seized on this opening to present humanity's case for full membership in the Galactic Federation, emphasizing the innovative thinking and adaptability that Daeho had just demonstrated. But what surprised everyone was Taimin's counter-proposal. Rather than simply granting Earth membership, he wanted to establish a joint training program that would allow Valkorian warriors to learn human combat techniques while sharing their own advanced technology and strategic knowledge. The proposal was revolutionary. Never before had the Valkorians, with their proud warrior culture and millennia of conquest, asked to learn from a supposedly primitive species. But Taimin had recognized something that would prove crucial in the challenges ahead. Raw technological superiority meant nothing if an opponent could consistently outthink and outmaneuver superior forces. Daeho found himself at the center of these historic negotiations, his practical insights helping to shape an agreement that would benefit both species. The joint training facility would be established on a neutral world where human Marines and Valkorian soldiers would train side by side, each learning from the other unique strengths. It was an arrangement that would have been unthinkable before that moment on the landing platform. As the Valkorian transport prepared to depart Earth carrying news of humanity's unexpected capabilities to the far reaches of the galaxy, Boram made a request that surprised everyone. Despite his injuries, he asked to remain behind as the first Valkorian exchange officer determined to master the combat techniques that had so thoroughly defeated him. His four-armed salute to Daeho as they shook hands marked the beginning of what would become a legendary partnership. The news of humanity's entry into the Galactic Federation spread quickly throughout known space, but it was the story of the 3-second fight that truly captured the galaxy's attention. Across dozens of worlds, the tale of the human warrior who had defeated a Valkorian champion through pure skill and determination became the stuff of legend, inspiring countless others to question their own assumptions about strength and superiority. General Taimin's final words to the human delegation would be remembered for generations. We came here expecting to evaluate primitives for potential servitude. Instead, we discovered teachers who will help us become better warriors. The galaxy is vast and full of unknown threats, but with humanity as our allies, we face the future with greater confidence than ever before. Years later, as joint human-Valkorian units distinguished themselves in conflicts across the galaxy, military historians would point to that moment on the landing platform as the beginning of a new era in interstellar warfare. But for Daeho, who eventually became the first human general in the Galactic Federation, integrated command structure, the memory that mattered most was simpler, the moment when mutual respect was earned, not through words or diplomacy, but through the timeless language of warrior meeting warrior in honorable combat. The broken jaw that ended Boram's perfect combat record became the crack through which humanity light began to shine across the stars, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior strength, but from the refusal to accept that victory is impossible. In 3 seconds, everything changed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The training programs that followed would revolutionize military thinking. Throughout the known galaxy, human concepts of adaptive tactics, improvised weapons, and psychological warfare were integrated with alien technology and strategic doctrine, creating new forms of combat that neither species could have developed alone. The partnership that began with a single punch would eventually grow into an alliance that spanned thousands of worlds and countless species, all united by the understanding that true strength comes not from what you are born with, but from what you choose to do with it. Daeho would often reflect in his later years that the most important lesson of that day was not about fighting techniques or military strategy, but about the power of respect earned through action rather than given through fear. The Valkorians had arrived expecting to find servants and instead found partners. The humans had expected to be judged and instead became teachers. And the galaxy had expected another routine evaluation and instead witnessed the birth of something entirely new. The landing platform where it all began would eventually be preserved as a monument to interspecies cooperation with a simple plaque that read, "Here human and alien first met as equals proved through the oldest form of communication, known to warrior peoples everywhere." In the end, it was not technology or politics or diplomacy that changed the course of history, but the fundamental recognition that courage and skill transcend the boundaries of species, and that true warriors will always recognize and respect each other regardless of where they come from or how many arms they happen to have.